Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unraveling a pretty fascinating medical mystery, how the blood sugar flowing through your veins right now directly impacts the very organ processing these words, your brain. You know, most of us probably think of metabolic issues as something that just affects our heart, or, let's be honest, our waistline. But the science? It's telling us a completely different story about cognitive longevity.
Okay, let's dive into this. 2%. That tiny little fraction is how much your brain makes up of your total body weight. So, structurally speaking, it's just a blip of your overall mass. But don't let that small physical footprint fool you for a second.
Because here's the wild contrast. That same 2% organ hogs a massive 20% of your body's energy at rest. And unlike your muscles, your brain stores very little energy of its own. It relies entirely on a continuous, incredibly stable supply of glucose from your bloodstream, just to keep billions of neurons firing.
And when that glucose supply isn't stable, well, your brain feels it immediately. Long before anyone ever gets a diabetes diagnosis, everyday glucose swings, the spikes and the crashes, they cause a literal energy crisis in your head. This shows up as brain fog, poor memory, anxiety, and just profound fatigue. Your brain is essentially stuttering because its fuel line is totally erratic.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how it completely flips the script on insulin. We traditionally view insulin simply as the key that unlocks our body's cells to let glucose in, right? But in the brain, insulin has a whole secret identity. It acts as a master signaling molecule. It strengthens the communication between neurons, supports memory formation, and even regulates crucial neurotransmitters.
Part 1. The cellular energy crisis, when brain cells resist. So, what happens when things go wrong? Well, just like the rest of the body, the brain can actually develop insulin resistance, meaning it starts ignoring insulin's vital signals. And when this happens, it sparks a cascade of very specific, very harmful processes.
Let's look at our first villain here and see how this builds up. Elevated blood sugar sparks chronic, low-grade inflammation. This inflammation actually crosses into the brain and activates immune cells called microglia. Now, while they're meant to protect you, this chronic activation turns them aggressive, causing them to physically damage healthy neurons and synapses.
Following right on the heels of inflammation is oxidative stress. Basically, high blood sugar creates a massive surge of free radicals. And because your brain consumes so much oxygen, it is uniquely vulnerable to these unstable molecules. When oxidative stress overwhelms the brain's natural defenses, it starts damaging cell membranes, proteins, and, even DNA.
All this relentless damage eventually hits the mitochondria, the powerhouses of your cells. Insulin resistance actively impairs these tiny engines. And as these powerhouses die off, your brain cells literally run out of the energy currency they need to form new memories, communicate with each other, or just repair everyday damage.
And this brilliantly illustrates our next casualty, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF. Think of BDNF like Miracle-Gro for the brain. It helps grow new neural connections and keeps the existing ones alive and healthy. But insulin resistance and chronic inflammation, they starve the brain of this vital fertilizer, effectively halting your brain's ability to adapt and learn.
Ultimately, all of this cellular chaos targets a very specific, absolutely critical region, the hippocampus. This is your brain's command center for learning and memory. Studies clearly show that insulin resistance shrinks the volume of the hippocampus and impairs its function. And alarmingly, this is the exact same brain region targeted in the early stages of Alzheimer's disease.
Part 2. The dementia connection. Long-term cognitive risk. This brings us to a massive, pretty sobering realization. We are no longer just talking about having a little daily brain fog here. We're talking about long-term cognitive survival. Let's explore the direct connection between these lifelong metabolic problems and severe cognitive decline.
The overlap between impaired insulin signaling and Alzheimer's disease is honestly so striking that a lot of researchers have started using a really provocative term to describe it: type 3 diabetes.
Now, we do need to be precise here for a second. Type 3 diabetes is a research concept. It's not an official medical diagnosis you'd get from your doctor. Researchers just used this term to highlight how incredibly deeply impaired glucose metabolism, inflammation, and reduced insulin signaling are intertwined with the buildup of those abnormal proteins we see in Alzheimer's. And the damage isn't just to the neurons themselves, it's also to the highway system that supplies them. Chronically high blood sugar physically damages the lining of your blood vessels. This restricts cerebral blood flow, causing things like small vessel disease and silent strokes. It's essentially suffocating the brain of oxygen and accelerating vascular dementia.
Part 3. Protecting your mind. Metabolic health habits. All right, this is where we shift gears because your cognitive destiny is definitely not set in stone. The incredible news here is that the exact lifestyle habits that heal your metabolism also act as the ultimate antidote for your brain. So, let's look at how you can actively protect your metabolic mind.
It all starts with getting moving. 150 minutes of moderate exercise a week. When you exercise, you immediately improve your body's insulin sensitivity. You increase blood flow straight to the brain. And incredibly, physical activity directly stimulates the production of that vital BDNF, that brain fertilizer we were just talking about.
Next up is how you fuel the system. A diet centered on whole plant foods, we're talking beans, lentils, vegetables, and intact whole grains, is just packed with fiber. And fiber is your absolute best friend here because it acts as a brake pedal. It slows down glucose absorption and completely stops those massive blood sugar spikes that trigger brain inflammation in the first place. Then there's the power of rest. 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep isn't some luxury, it is mandatory maintenance. Literally, just a few nights of poor sleep can wreck your insulin sensitivity. But more importantly, during deep sleep, your brain activates its glymphatic system. It's basically a literal washing machine mechanism that clears out all the toxic metabolic waste you've accumulated throughout the day.
Rounding out our protective toolkit are 3 final super vital steps. First, manage chronic stress to lower cortisol because otherwise that cortisol drives up your blood sugar. Second, aim to lose just 5 to 10% of your body weight if you're carrying excess visceral fat. This drastically cuts body-wide inflammation. And third, challenge your brain. Learn new skills to build up your cognitive reserve.
So the crucial point is this. Metabolic health is our absolute most powerful, modifiable tool against cognitive decline. Every healthy meal, every walk, and every single good night's sleep isn't just about fitting into your genes or staving off a diabetes diagnosis. It is quite literally an investment in preserving your memory and protecting your ability to think clearly. Which leaves us with the most important question of this whole explainer. Are your daily habits investing in your cognitive longevity? The science shows us that the power to protect your brain is entirely in your hands, starting with your very next meal.